Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 928 of the Juicebox Podcast, the episode where you get the 411. It's been a while. Is that a song? It's been a while since I've touched you to myself. Hold on a second. It's been a while. Lyrics. Stained. Oh my God. Now I'm embarrassed. Anyway, it's been a while since I could hold my head up high. Because I haven't been doing what I said I was going to do. But not no more. No siree. Scott's back to fulfill a promise. While you're listening today, please remember that nothing you hear on the Juicebox Podcast should be considered advice, medical or otherwise. Always consult a physician before making any changes to your healthcare plan or becoming bold with insulin. No advertisers on this show today. There's no ads. Doesn't mean I'm not going to mention the advertisers, but there's no ads. It's going to be quick and easy, a short, thorough, and informative podcast episode for you, the Juicebox Podcast listener. In the interest of keeping this short, and because of the type of episode it is, like I said, seriously, no ads today. But I do want to remind you about the advertisers. I'm talking about Dexcom, Omnipod, US Med, Contour, Gvoke HypoPen, AG1 from Athletic Greens, CozyEarth.com, BetterHelp.com, T1D Exchange, Touched by Type 1. These are the good people who help keep the podcast afloat. If you have the need for a purchase or the desire to learn more, using my links are very helpful to me and keeping the show free the way it is. So there's links in the show notes of your podcast player or at juiceboxpodcast.com, or you can find the links in any number of other episodes. If you have the need or the desire, please use my links. That is all for that. Let us move on now. Here's what I'm here for. Today, I want to talk about how to navigate the website and how to navigate the podcast. We first did this in episode 411. I thought I was clever. I was like, I'll make it the 411 because that's where you get help from on the phone, right? This is going to be episode 930. Not quite as clever, but a needed update. So there are a number of series within the podcast. There's the After Dark series, Ask Scott and Jenny, Algorithm Pumping, Bold Beginnings, Defining Diabetes, Defining Thyroid, Diabetes Pro Tip, Diabetes Variables, Mental Wellness, Type 2 Diabetes Pro Tip, How We Eat, and actually even more than that. And it's getting to the point now where, let's be honest, the podcast has almost 1,000 episodes. It's hard to scroll, right? You need to know where you're going. So there's two ways. Like, say, I'm just going to pick a series. Let's say you want to learn more about the Algorithm Pumping series or Bold Beginnings. Let's say Bold Beginnings because I clicked on it. So you can go to juiceboxpodcast.com and there's a menu at the top and you can just click on Bold Beginnings. Right there, you're going to say, it's like, hey, if you were just diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, the Bold Beginnings series, blah, blah, blah. Now there's links. You could right away go to Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart, Amazon Music, you can use any player you want, but there's links there for those, right? Like if I clicked on the Apple Podcast link, it would take me right to the show on Apple Podcasts. You'd hit follow, and just like that, you'd be getting new episodes. Or you can just scroll down and listen online. I don't recommend listening online. It's not the easiest way. Listening in, let's be honest, in an app is the easiest way to listen to audio. But there's a player there, and it's got a list. It's got, all the episodes in order in the Bold Beginnings series. 698 is Defining Bold Beginnings. It's the series start. And then 702 is about honeymooning, and 706 is about adult diagnosis, and on and on. You scroll through the player and you can see 711, 712, 715, 719, 23, 27, 731, all these are part of the series. Now you can just go back to your app if you want and search Bold Beginnings Juicebox 769, and you'll find the episode called Bold Beginnings Community. Or you can listen right here by clicking on it. Look, I don't see. Hello, friends. See that? I clicked on it and the episode came right on. You can do that too. Same goes for Algorithm Pumping, Ask Scott and Jenny, After Dark. All of them are right here. Let me give you a little rundown of what each of them are. The After Dark series is more topics that something potentially upsetting to someone or racy may have been said in the episode. So we kind of tag them After Dark so you have an idea, like maybe I wouldn't put this on in front of my kid while we're driving to school. The After Dark series began back in 2019 with a drinking episode. It goes on to do a weed episode, trauma and addiction, sex from a male and female perspective when you have type 1 diabetes, depression and self-harm, divorcing, co-parenting, bipolar disorder, bulimia, other eating disorders, PTSD, being the child of divorce. Like I can't read them all to you. But it goes on and on. There's, a lot of episodes, right up until one that came out recently, 9/21. With a lovely woman named Liv who has type 1 diabetes. That's what's in that series. They don't run concurrently in the episode. None of the series run concurrently, in the podcast. It's not like episodes 1 to 10 or After Dark and episodes 11 to 20 or something else. I don't have the power to do that. So this is the best way we can kind of put them all in one place. If you are a member of the private Facebook group, in the featured tab at the top of that group, all of these lists exist. So you can go check them out there as well. Anyway, Ask Scott and Jenny, that is listener feedback, listeners sending questions, and Jenny Smith and I. Jenny Smith, of course, a CDE who has had type 1 diabetes for forever, 35 years or something. Jenny's been on the show forever. We started doing Ask Scott and Jenny back in 2019. There's a ton of them. Algorithm Pumping covers T-Slim, Omnipod 5. What else? The Loop, Android APS. What's the company? You know the one. You know them. Why was the word not pop? Medtronic, right? The Medtronic pump. Sorry, Medtronic. All kinds of stuff in there. Resetting your Omnipod 5. We have this great episode called Control IQ Ninja. Really will up your game about Control IQ. Rise of the Machines is about what's upcoming with DIY algorithms, as is APS Wookie. There's a ton of them in there. Bold Beginnings is like the pro tip series for the very newly diagnosed. I love this one. We just made Bold Beginnings back in 2022. It begins at episode 698. And goes on to, the last one, it looks like it's December 8th, 2022, episode 805, Bold Beginnings, Illness Ketone Management. It covers things like insurance, family, treating low blood glucose, technology and medical supplies, journaling, community, guilt, fears, hope, expectations, exercise, school, flexibility, stacking, carbs, pre-bolusing, and so much more. I'm not kidding. There's still more. I could have kept reading. Then there's the Defining Diabetes series. This series is terrific. It's older. It's been around since, again, 2019. So many shorter episodes, 5, 10, 15 minutes, defining terms that you'll use every day with diabetes. Terms that, while after you've had type 1 for a while, you'll be like, I know what honeymooning means, but you might not know when you were first diagnosed. You want to know what standard deviation is, brittle diabetes, insulin resistance, rage bolusing, fat and protein rise, all kinds of stuff. You might be like, Scott, I don't know what you're talking about, but in a few minutes you will. And then you'll be surprised how that information will help you take care of your type 1 and oftentimes type 2 diabetes. If you're using insulin, a lot of this cross applies. Beautiful thyroid series. Dr. Addie Benito comes on, explains thyroid front and back. Many of you may have thyroid symptoms and levels that need treatment, but your doctor will say to you like, oh, that's in range. If you've heard that before, go listen to episode 413 and find out why you maybe shouldn't accept that as an answer. And then learn in the rest of the series about thyroid. Diabetes Pro Tip, crown jewel for the podcast. I think you listen to the Diabetes Pro Tip series, you're going to have an A1C in the low 6s, maybe with very little trouble. Diabetesprotip.com is another way to get to it. It begins in episode 210 in your podcast player and goes online. I mean, there's a Diabetes Pro Tip episode that went up just like 2 months ago. Episode 899, Diabetes Pro Tip Transitioning, Honeymooning, Female Hormones, Weight Loss, Postpartum, Glycemic. Why are people calling me? Hold up. I'll be right back. Sorry, that was my mommy. Anyway, the Pro Tip series is fantastic. I'll tell you a little more about it at the end. There's a beautiful collection in the Mental Wealth series of conversations with caregivers, adults, a therapist named Erica who has had type 1 diabetes for over 30 years. We talk about everything diabetes related and more in that wonderful series that began back in 2020 and just went up with another episode the other day where actually I talked to Erica about some stuff that's bothering me. There's a Type 2 Pro Tip series. This is a fairly new add to the Juicebox podcast. We learned that a lot of people using insulin with Type 2 were listening to the show, and we wanted to give them their very own series. This is brand new for 2023. It begins at episode 860, Diabetes Pro Tip series intro. Covers things like guilt and shame, medical team, fueling plan, diabetes technology, getting moving, GLP-1 medications, metformin, and insulin. And there are wonderful conversations with people who have type 2 diabetes. Regular everyday people like Michael, John, and Leanne. And some people who are famous, like the comedian is it Gardell? It's Billy Gardell, right? From Mike and Molly. And Anthony Anderson. You know Anthony Anderson. Rev Run was on. Just check it out. If you know somebody with type 2, pass this series on to them. There's the How We Eat series where people come on and talk about all the different ways that people eat. Because if there's one thing for sure, I do not care how you eat. I care that you understand how to use insulin for what you eat. There have been people on talking about intermittent fasting, flexitarian diet, keto, FODMAP, Bernstein, low carb, gluten-free, plant-based, carnivore, vegan. We even had Jenny on to talk about how she eats. Check it out. It's all there at juiceboxpodcast.com or in the Facebook tab of the private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast Type 1 Diabetes. Now, by the way, if you're not in that group, 40,000 members. It has something for everyone. You can lurk, you can ask questions, you can answer questions. It's a wonderful, beautiful community that, dare I say, transcends Facebook. It's a very un-Facebook-like experience. People are very kind. The group is very helpful. It is very active. I think you'll like it. All right, so that's what's in the podcast. Well, sorry, it's late at night. I got to drink something. That's the series that are in the podcast. Every day, there's a new episode of the podcast. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. On Friday, we do a best of. But Monday through Thursday, brand new content every day. But how do you listen? Well, Apple Podcasts is one way. If you have an Apple phone, that phone has the Apple Podcast app on it. Just find the podcast app, search Juicebox Podcast Type 1 Diabetes, and then follow or subscribe to it. You can also use Spotify, Google Play, Amazon Music, Pandora, Amazon Alexa even does it, right? Anywhere you can get audio, you can get the Juicebox Podcast. Find the show and then follow or subscribe. Different apps use different words. Some say subscribe and some say follow. I don't know why. What else do I have for you? Oh, if you're starting Omnipod 5, there's a pro tip series for Omnipod 5. Juiceboxpodcast.com/Omnipod 5. Wonderful 3-part series that will get you going with more success when you start Omnipod 5. It's with Carrie Burgett. Carrie is a CDE, and she actually worked on some Omnipod 5 trials. So at the time that we recorded this series, there was a lot of information in Carrie's head already, and she made the most of it. Fantastic series. If you're starting with Omnipod 5, definitely check it out. There's a blog at juiceboxpodcast.com. There are, every new episode that goes up is at juiceboxpodcast.com. Every new Diabetes Pro Tips series, there's links to the sponsors there. There's the Bold Beginnings, recent articles in the blog, Defining Diabetes, the Variable series, the After Dark, the Algorithm Pumping. It's all right on the front page. You don't even have to click on the links at the top if you don't want to. I'm trying to make the podcast as accessible as possible for you. So go ahead and join the private Facebook group. It's invaluable. And by the way, completely free. Never, by the way, will I charge you for anything. You don't get charged for the podcast. You don't get charged for the online support groups. You don't get charged for anything. The podcast is ad supported. That's how I make my living. The content is yours for free. The support is yours for free. There will never be a charge to listen to the Juicebox podcast. And I do not make episodes or content that give you just a little bit of information and then tell you, go click over here and become like a gold member or pay once a month and then you can get the rest of this. I don't do that. I'm not trying to sell you a coaching plan. I am not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to get this content to you. We let the advertisers pay the bills and you guys get the content. That's how I have it set up. I'm proud that it's set up that way, and I hope you take advantage of it. Other than that, I'm on Instagram. I mean, check it out if you want to. I'm old, so it might not be that exciting for you. But if you use Instagram a lot, we do put information up there. Same with TikTok. But Facebook, there's a public page too called Bold with Insulin. The private group is called Juicebox Podcast Type 1 Diabetes. There's just so much information there. I jump in and answer questions, talk to people every day. I'm in there every day. I hope to see you there. Okay. Find an audio app, subscribe or follow the podcast, check out the private Facebook group, become a member, listen to the show. If you need any help, go to the Facebook group and ask for help. If you need any help, go to the website and send me an email and ask for help. I will be more than happy to help you get started with the podcast. Now, here's the why. Why would you want to listen to the podcast? I'm going to share a couple things with you, and I'll have you out of here in a few minutes. We recently did a survey of 1,143 listeners of the Juicebox Podcast. Do you frequently listen to any other diabetes podcasts? The answer, no, 1,071. Yes, 73. Next question. On average, how many episodes of the podcast do you listen to every week? 801 people listen to between 1 and 4 episodes per week. 11 to 30 episodes, 25 people a week. 64 respondents said, I've listened to every episode. Who was helpful in reducing your overall feelings of fear and anxiety related to diabetes? The options were medical professionals, the Juicebox Podcast and its Facebook group, or other print and online materials. The scores were out of 6,000. I know that's weird to think about, but Juicebox Podcast, 5803, medical professionals, 3374, online materials and other print materials, 2735. Overwhelmingly, the Juicebox Podcast was chosen. My comprehension and literacy levels around diabetes management improves with the knowledge and insights that I gained from, again, Juicebox Podcast beats those other two. Significantly beats them in this survey. Who has been a dependable and essential resource for you to maintain and improve your diabetes management? Again, far and away, Juicebox Podcast and its Facebook group. I can go on and on. There's no need to. They're all going to say the same thing. People who listen to the Juicebox Podcast are supported by it. They are helped by it. And they leave really wonderful reviews for the podcast. I'm going to read you just a couple. And then that's it. You're out here, okay? I'm going to go all the way back to the beginning of the show, 2015. 2015 is when this show started. 5-star review, great information. I am an adult type 1, diagnosed last year. I don't have kids yet, and I hope that when I do, my kids won't have to suffer through this. Learning some great tips. Even my management plan is different since listening to the Juicebox Podcast. If you deal with type 1 in any way, take the time to listen. 2016, randomly chosen review. From 2016, my favorite type 1 podcast. I listen to a number of podcasts, but the Juicebox Podcast tops them all. The host, Scott Benner, which is me, is always providing quality content to encourage me on my journey with my newly diagnosed daughter. He's funny and laid back, but gives some seriously good tips on management. Funny, okay? 2017, finding this podcast completely changed my life. Having type 1 is the worst, but what I've learned from listening to this podcast is that I am not alone, that it is possible to live a normal life where diabetes isn't something you're completely dominated by. Thank you, Scott, for all you do. I've learned so much. I'm definitely being bold with insulin and smarter with insulin. Went from an A1C of 10 to 5.9 in 3 months. And that's due in large part to what I've learned from listening to this podcast. That was 2017, 2018. Informative, comforting, much appreciated. Listen and learn. The learning gleaned from this podcast is unmatched. No doctor or support group or book can teach you more about type 1 diabetes than listening to the stories of others and Scott's experience. I feel so lucky to have found this podcast so early in diagnosis. Tomorrow, I'm going to give you one more. Is the anniversary of my 28th year with type 1 diabetes. In the past 12 months, I've been listening to the Juicebox Podcast. It has been the most productive year yet. This podcast has had a huge role in that productivity. I've gone from an A1C around 9 to what I'm hoping is going to be 5.8 the next time I check. I seriously could read these all day. I think it's getting a little repetitive, but right here in 2023, just the last review I got. I've been binge listening since I found this podcast. My son and husband both have type 1. Man, I wish I had this when my son was still living with me at home. I'm learning and I'm sharing, and we're going to get our A1Cs lower. This podcast is for people who have diabetes and for the people who love them. I don't care if you've had type 1 for 30 years or 3 minutes. The Juicebox Podcast is here for you. Juiceboxpodcast.com. Type 1 diabetes, type 2 diabetes, gestational. There's a whole pregnancy series I forgot to even tell you about. It's fantastic. Check it out. Go find the private Facebook group, Juicebox Podcast, Type 1 Diabetes. Join the group. See what you can get out of it. That's it, guys. That's how you listen to the Juicebox Podcast. That's why you would listen to it. That's what you would listen to. Thank you so much for listening. I'll be back very soon with another episode of the Juicebox Podcast. As I said earlier, the show is supported by longtime sponsors. You can get a Dexcom G7 at dexcom.com/juicebox. Learn more about the Omnipod DASH and Omnipod 5 at omnipod.com/juicebox. You can get your diabetes supplies the way we do from US Med, usmed.com/juicebox. Get yourself an accurate and reliable blood glucose meter at contournext.com/juicebox. Are you carrying glucagon? I hope you are. Please consider the Gvoke HypoPen, gvokeglucagon.com/juicebox. And if you'd like to support a fantastic organization helping people with type 1 diabetes, look no farther than touchedbytype1.org. To see some of the most comfortable loungewear, clothing, towels, and bedding that I've ever used, go to CozyEarth.com and use the offer code JUICEBOX at checkout to save 35% off your entire order. Get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D, as well as 5 free travel packs with your first order of AG1 from Athletic Greens at my link, athleticgreens.com/juicebox. And you can take care of yourself at BetterHelp.com. Save 10% off your first month of therapy, online therapy, at BetterHelp.com/juicebox.